go. The moment you've all been waiting for to hear from Governor Ron DeSantes and Casey DeSantes. So thank you so much for being here. Absolutely. So, our theme tonight is raising pro-life children, and that's our newest project. And so we're going to just start right off the bat and ask you, you guys have a young family, and you're doing it, and you're raising, hopefully, pro-life children. So why don't you share a little bit about what you guys are doing to raise pro-life children?
Well, I can just say we are doing quite a bit. One of the things that is really important to me, and somebody said this along the way in our journey, they said, when you are handing your child over to somebody, whether it is a caretaker, whether it is an educator, whether it is a family member, you have to think about your children's life as an open book, right? And you're giving that person the opportunity to write a page in your child's book. And so you want to ensure that they're instilling the values that you believe in, a culture of life and decency and of truth and of family values. And so that's one of the things that we really hold dear. And also when you look at what's happening in our school systems and you look at this indoctrination, you have to stand strong in defense of that. And we've really tried to do that in the state of Florida. And also with the kids, going out, me personally, showing that every life has value and worth. And showing the kids going out and volunteering and getting them involved in the community and showing that everyone has the opportunity to live up to their God-given potential. And that's something that we want to provide the kids with the opportunity to help, particularly people in need.
When, so our first child was born, so she's going to turn 7 on Wednesday. Time flies. When her brother was conceived, the way we told friends and family is we had our oldest, who was probably not that old at the time, just holding the ultrasound of her little baby brother. And so that's a picture she's always going to have. And then when we had our third, we had both the brother and the sister holding the ultrasound of their soon-to-be baby sister. So I think when you see it in those terms, and this is going to be something that they'll carry with them for the rest of their lives, everything Casey said obviously is the truth. But, man, that's powerful. They had that picture there thanks to science and technology that they knew they were going to have these siblings come along the way.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic. So, one of the things that we hear all the time in the pro-life movement is that we only care about the baby in the womb and we don't care about the baby after they come, right? And it's completely false, as all of you know. So you have a program called the First Lady's Hope Florida and a fatherhood initiative in Florida. Could you share a little bit about that?
So, we are of the mind when much is given, much is expected, right? It's not about us, but what do you do to be able to do good on behalf of other people? And so one of the things that I realized being First Lady of the state of Florida is you have the opportunity to get a lot of really good people in the room to communicate about best solutions, particularly as it pertains something very near and dear to my heart: single moms, children in the foster care system, children aging out of the foster care system, adoptive families, pregnant mothers, and also pregnant mothers who are battling substance abuse. And what can we do and how can we think differently? Because, oftentimes prior to the governor getting into office, there were people in need. And what would typically happen is someone would come into the, quote, system and I think it's because there's a speaker right here, so I'm going to get really close to you. And it's because I love you to death, but also I don't want to blow anyone's ears out. So I think what was neat about what we did is we're trying to be able to help people in a meaningful way. And so when people were coming into the Department of Children and Families, which is traditionally the agency within government that is helping people in need, what traditionally would happen is someone would say, well, here is a government assistance payment, we'll see you in 6 months, I hope it goes well. And that was the end of the conversation. But what we knew is that there are so many good people on the ground who are willing to do wonderful things. It's just there were people in need, and then particularly the faith-based community and the nonprofit community who didn't know that they were there. So we changed how we service and we help people, particularly single moms. So if you have somebody coming into the system, instead of getting a government assistance check, although we will help them with that, we will literally give an immediate alert to our participating faith-based community. So let's say if a single mom is having a hard time putting food on the table and they need bunk beds and mattresses or book bags or what have you, we literally have somebody who is inputting that into an electronic system. It goes out to our participating faith-based community. We have 16.5 million people of faith in the state of Florida. They see that in real time. They're like, yeah, absolutely we can help. And then they deliver all of those needs to that single mom's front doorstep. So what government has really transformed So government has transformed now as a convener and a collaborator between good people in need and good people who have always been there, but they didn't know that they were there. And we've been able to help people, particularly to single moms, by tapping into the Fatherhood Initiative as well, because we see one of the greatest things that you can do, particularly for children who have very troubled beginnings, whether it's abuse or neglect, is to provide mentorship opportunities. And the governor has devoted a lot of resources, Ron, to that, and have been able to provide opportunities for those single moms in particular.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think there's a lot of problems in our society that we can address, but if I had a wish to just do one, snap my fingers, I think if we could ensure that every kid was growing up with not just a mother, but also a father in the home, that would solve a lot of these other problems that we see. And I started to get involved in this my first year as governor. We had provided some support for some of these nonprofit groups. One of them is called All Pro Dads, which was done by Tony Dungy, who was the coach of Tampa and Indianapolis. And I remember the first year as governor, Tony came to lobby me on it to my office, or maybe he called me, I don't know. And I'm just like, Tony, man, you don't got to lobby me. Like I love you. If you think this is good, I'm for it. But he started explaining to me, he's like, look, when he would go minister to prisoners, because he's a Christian and would go into prisons and really try to talk to these guys, he said, I did it and I realized they weren't there because they were poor or their race or all this other stuff that you typically hear. He said not having that father figure is what led them astray, and that's what he said. So what we're doing is providing support resources to enhance fatherhood, promote awareness about it, have expectations, but also just if we can provide kids with a mentor, somebody taking an interest in a young kid could make all the difference. I mean, when I was in the Navy, I did the Big Brother program. So I mentored a youth. We were in Northeast Florida at the time from Jacksonville. His father was in prison, so he didn't have a dad in the home. So I did this, and I don't know how long I did it for, maybe a couple years. Lo and behold, he ended up, when he got out of high school, joining the Navy and having a productive career serving our country. I don't think he would have made that choice had I not been there in this Big Brother program. So that's what we're trying to do in Florida, and I think it makes a big difference.
And I would assume that this is something you'd like to bring on a national scale. It sounds like it's wildly successful in Florida.
Yeah, and I think just the general approach of what the First Lady spearheaded, when people go in, this care portal is how all these groups plug into. So we have all the churches, synagogues, but we also have businesses. We also have nonprofits and even individuals, so that when there's a need, it goes out, people snap into action. And you know what? When the church gets involved, that person doesn't really seek government assistance ever again most of the time, because they're on a pathway to self-sufficiency. They're being taken care of by people in the community who care about them. Yes, I have a bias in terms of wanting faith to be there, because I think that can lift people up. I mean, it's not just about checks. It's about soul craft as well, and this gives an opportunity to do that. So we're going to do that in terms of some of these federal programs, because we have so much energy in this country of good people, but it's like government is often a roadblock. And think about veterans. I remember when I left the Navy, they gave me a packet, and I didn't need anything, I was fine, but I'm like, I don't even understand this stuff. It's such bureaucrat nonsense, and so people go into the VA, they don't get services and all that stuff. what if you had a portal, you walk into that VA, your needs are there, then every veterans group in your community is plugged in. Businesses are plugged in, even just individual volunteers. A veteran's having a hard time, someone's like, you know what, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna take the veteran to lunch. Just let them know I thank you for your service and I care about you. That can make the difference between somebody deciding not to commit suicide. So we're gonna take that model, but yes, we're gonna harness the faith-based community to be able to generate positive outcomes with programs that have typically not done that.
And he brings up a really good point. Since we launched this in late 2021, we've been able to transition off nearly 10,000 people from government assistance because it's on a pathway to economic self-sufficiency and tapping into the resources that are there. And he's right, it's a philosophical different approach to the way government operates. It's not coming in, getting a check, and then you're off to the races and, you know, everything, we hope it goes well. It is going in and seeing how government can communicate, collaborate, and then get out of the way. And we're doing that with the Veterans Affairs. To his point, man, what does that do if the faith-based community knows that there's a veteran down the street now because you have government coming in here as far as knowing that that veteran is there, and somebody shows up on his front doorstep with a plate of lasagna just to say, you know what? Thank you for your service. Thank you for everything you've done. We've been able to facilitate that. We've also been able to tap into the Department of Juvenile Justice, so there are a lot of kids who need hope and opportunities. The number one thing, we have children come through and meet with us, and they talk about how they were able to overcome adversity. These are kids who have been through the Department of Juvenile Justice, but now they're class presidents, and they're going to college for the first time in their family, and I ask every single one of them, and this goes back to the mentorship, every single one of them, the same question: how did you get here to the governor's mansion? What was it? And it was because somebody took an interest in my life and gave me value. So now, you incorporate the faith-based community and the nonprofits into that in a system where somebody shows up and they want to make a difference. And so we do that with elder affairs. How nice would it be for a senior citizen who's sitting alone to have somebody show up to say, hey, how are you doing? Are things, what can we do to help you? So, and what we've done is reduced the size and scope of government, because we've taken people who were traditionally creating and executing upon those grant payments, and we've transitioned them into navigators that are helping people get on a path to either economic self-sufficiency, prosperity, hope, what have you, purpose. And it's all about thinking differently about how government operates. The Great Society's put how many trillions of dollars, and what is the return on the investment? Yes, from the taxpayer, but also the return on the investment in helping good people who are in need. And I know that we're working with your great governor to take this same model to approach it to the legislature and the state here in Iowa. And I think it's a game changer if we just think differently about what is the proper limited and defined role of government.
Thank you. So, you know, as a fellow parent, I think one of the things that's really hard is that balance between your work and your family. And you guys are doing it, and you have your young family, and they're on the campaign trail with you. And the first time I met you guys was over in Grimes at the coffee shop. Just beautiful having those young children with you. But how in the heck are you doing it? That's the question, and everybody wants to know. How do you do it? How do you strike that balance, and how are you raising your kids along the trail with you?
Well, we try to bring them with them as much as we can, because we just want to spend time with them. We don't want to be absent. When they're with us during the week, we do their homework with them and homeschool and do all that. Now they're in school when we're back home in Florida. So it's just juggling. We learn something new every day. It's a very interesting process when you're running for president. It's not a normal thing. One of the reasons I ran for governor in the first place was because I was a member of U.S. Congress. We had our daughter at the end of my second term after I had been elected for a third term, so I go up for the third term. And I'm thinking to myself, why am I going and leaving my wife and daughter for 4 or 5 days a week? And then coming back? I was like, I don't really like that. So as governor, it's a very family-friendly job because you can do whatever you need to do around the state. You usually could be home for dinner time, no questions. And I would say my first term as governor, I mean, I rarely spent the night anywhere else other than home. I would make sure to get home. And there was occasionally if I was traveling out of state, but that was much rarer. So we just try to be present as much as possible. But we also understand some of the things that I'm doing as governor and what I do as president, it's personal for us. When we're doing these education battles, yes, I'd like to think I would be strong and stand up for all these things if our kids were fully grown or if we didn't have kids. But the fact that we have these young kids, we're sensitive to what's going on in the schools. We're sensitive to ensuring that parents have rights to direct the education and upbringing of their kids. We're sensitive that parents can access the curriculum so that they know if they're trying to jam pornography in their fourth grader's classroom. You should know that as a parent. You should be able to object to that. So, and we had in Florida, we had, you know, one of the kind of the marquee battles that we had was over this parents' rights in education legislation, which basically said no sexualization of the curriculum, gender ideology, any of that in elementary school. And you'd think that that's kind of a no-brainer. Why would we even be having this discussion? Obviously, it is being done in other parts of the country. And so we felt strong that that was the right policy. The media, of course, did not like that and attacked us. The left, of course, did not like that and attacked us, which we expected that. But what we didn't necessarily expect was our state's most powerful company, someone you may have heard of, Disney, to come out and attack the legislation and fight against us on that. And you know, it was kind of funny that we had to do battle with that. Well, what most people said, you're not going to be able to beat them because they're too powerful. They get everything they want in Florida. But it would just so happen that no one had made more money for this company than me because they were open in COVID in Florida during COVID. They were closed in California. They made a fortune in our state because we were open. And something that wasn't known as much, we actually got married at Disney World. That was her idea, not my idea. And so we did. They have a nice wedding chapel and everything like that. And they actually did a good job. So it wasn't like I was like out to get them, but if we can't draw a line in the sand and say we are going to stand up for the innocence of our children, then what good are you in elected office? And so we fought that fight against Disney. We won that fight against Disney, and the kids in Florida are better off for having done that.
You know, it's so obvious that you guys care so much about families. So, you know, as you're out and about on the campaign trail, what are you hearing from parents across the country as to what's important to them and what they're struggling with?
Well, I mean, she's done a lot with the Mamas for DeSantes movement, and she's done a lot in Iowa. I think they have all the counties have chairmen now, all 99 counties. She did a great in our re-election and was Florida governor with all that. But I think the parents are concerned about the schools being used to pursue a political agenda at the expense of their kids. They're concerned about wanting to have meaningful choice in where they send their kids to school to begin with. I think as you talk to parents who have kids are a little bit older, they're really concerned about these universities and some of the stuff that's gone on. And we've gotten to see this just with pro-Hamas protests that you're seeing. In some of the most previously respected universities in our country, you have these students out there protesting in favor of a terrorist organization. It's really, really problematic. And so I think all those are really significant issues. I think parents are concerned about their own kids, of course, but also seeing these problems writ large across the country. What does that mean for the next generation or two generations? Are we going to be able, you know, Benjamin Franklin, when he walked out of the Constitutional Convention after having framed the Constitution, was asked, did you give us a republic or a monarchy? He said, a republic if you can keep it. You have to have citizens that have a good foundation in American freedom and understanding our rights come from God, not from government. All these key things. And I think people see that we're really losing that. So in Florida, we fought back on all those fronts. We've had more success than probably anyone thought was possible. And we're happy to do that. But this is an important fight. Parents' rights, making sure we're educating, not indoctrinating. I think the success of this country hangs in the balance about whether we win those fights or not.
Yeah, and for sure. And I would say, it is, I never thought in a million years that anyone would ever use our children as vehicles to advance their ideology and their agenda. You always thought that the kids were hands off. And so I talk a lot of moms and they'll say, it's one thing you come after us with your policies, we can litigate it, we can show up at school board meetings unless the DOJ wants to investigate you as a domestic terrorist. But but when you go after the kids, and they're so impressionable, and I think that's something that I didn't really realize until I became a mama, right? Like, they are so susceptible to somebody coming in and hijacking their innocence. And you don't realize that until you're there with a 6-year-old or a 5-year-old who's, litigating with you, David versus Goliath or what have you. And it's funny, but it's also very serious. And so the other thing I would say I hear a lot about is public safety, especially when we're traveling out in other parts of the country and these cities that are defunding law enforcement and making these communities less safe, and also things that are happening, by our southern border scares a lot of folks.
Yeah, for sure. So, you've done a lot in the state of Florida on the life issue. And as I referenced in my talk, that we've had some blows in terms of life. And so a lot of people are saying life is a losing issue and we should rethink how we go forward on the life issue. So what's your response to that?
Well, I think you made a good point about this Ohio, how much money was spent promoting it. So you have a situation where on these referenda, you have so much money flowing in to promote it, and then the media is 95% in favor of those. So it's created an imbalance. So what's the information flow that these voters are getting when they're going in there? And the fact of the matter is, it's Republicans that are, supposed to be promoting culture of life and everything. But if you look, a lot of these business guys, these Wall Street guys, they are not pro-life. And so they may support Republicans because they want lower taxes, but they're more apt to give to the other side when it comes to something like this. So I do think we've got a structural problem when it comes to these referenda. I look at Florida. We have, of course, the Heartbeat Protection Act, but they're trying to get on the ballot to do a constitutional amendment in Florida, and they would need 60%, not 50%. But the reality is, it's a very big, expensive state to be able to advertise in, and I guarantee you the other side would come loaded for bear. So I don't think that the people of Ohio, if they were presented with maybe a robust defense of Ohio's pro-life laws, I don't think they would have come out the same way. I just think there was a major imbalance of how that was going, and what the information that people take to the ballot box is that. But I'd also say this: when you are in a position of leadership, why are you there? Are you there to just always choose the path of least political resistance, or are you there to actually do what you think is right? And the way I've kind of just governed myself in terms of all this is I just want to be able to look in the mirror and know I did the right thing for the right reason. And just let the chips fall where they may. But you can't contort yourself into a pretzel. You can't try to be something that you're not. Just tell people what you believe and let it rip.
So we've got a lot of Catholics in our audience, but also a lot of faithful people. And I understand you have a funny story about a baptism of one of your children.
This was funny, and this was when he was first elected governor back in 2019. So he tells it actually to be truthful. He tells it better than me, so he does play-by-play, and I'll do color with it, because it is.
Well, it actually goes back. It actually goes back before we had kids.
True.
And so we were, and I told a little bit of the story last night. I mean, we didn't have kids. We were trying. So we happened to be in Israel. I was a U.S. congressman, and she came. So we did a trip. And we did a bunch of different things, but one of the things that she did was she got water from the Sea of Galilee to bring back, so that when we had kids and it came time to do a baptism, we would baptize with the water from the Sea of Galilee. And so she just had them in like these, I think she had like 2 just plastic bottles, what you're doing. And I'm thinking to myself, TSA, it would make you spill that out. But you go to Israeli security, and we were like, what are they gonna do? And we just showed it to them, and they're like, it's water, what do we care? Take it on the plane. It's like common sense in Israel versus the nonsense we deal with in the United States. So anyways, we did it, we brought back, we eventually had our daughter Madison, and everything was good. Our son, Mason, was born in the spring of 2018. I was running for governor, and I was a member of Congress, and we're like, well, we're not going to be able to plan a baptism right now with any of this. So he said, let's just get through the election. And we did. And then we're like, you know what? People are going to be in town for our inauguration. Why don't we just do it at the governor's mansion after my speech and not do a parade or anything? So we did that. My uncle's a priest, so he came in and kind of did it. And so we did it. Everything seemed fine. But we just left the water just out in part of the governor's mansion. Now, we were not used to people picking up after us. We're just middle-class people. We go, well, they have a staff there. And so we go off to the inaugural ball, all this other stuff, and the staff cleaned up everything in the room. Well, the staff saw a half-empty bottle of water, so they spilled it out and threw this away. So the next morning, I was like, where's our Sea of Galilee water? And she's like, I think it's just downstairs. I went downstairs. There was no more Sea of Galilee water. So fast forward another week or two, I'm at a synagogue in South Florida doing some of our pro-Israel outreach. And I just mentioned, I said, we don't have a bun in the oven right now, but we are out of water from the Sea of Galilee. And within 24 hours, there were people in Israel going into the Sea of Galilee, getting water, and they sent me back a big glass jar of water from the Sea of Galilee that I kept on my desk in the state capitol until Mamie was born, and we eventually used it for that.
Yeah, and I always tell the kids, look with your eyes, don't touch with your hands, right? That's the last.
So you guys have spoken openly about your faith and how you leaned on that, especially during your battle, Casey, with cancer. So can you share how faith plays a role in your decision making and how you're going about the things that you're doing to be a governor and running for president?
Well, yeah, so when she was diagnosed with breast cancer, it was a big bomb for the family. And not that any of this stuff's ever easy, especially with cancer diagnosis, but I think when women with young children get it, it's a real serious blow, because you're thinking like you're going to have a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 4-year-old that may not end up having a mother. So it was a tough time for us as a family, and then we decided, are we going to go public with this? But we said, we should, because she may be out of pocket and there's just going to be. So we went public with it, and it was a dark time, but I'll tell you, the prayers that we received from people throughout Florida and throughout this country really lifted up the family. It lifted up Casey, and it was very, very powerful. So that is just an example that we lived through personally. She handled it very well. It was not easy to do, but I think it's because we had so many people praying for us. I really think that God just carried her through that whole ordeal. So it's been meaningful, just how we live our lives, but then also in some of the trials and tribulations that you have when you go through this journey in life. But I also always remind people as a public official, my faith is who I am, and so it's just part of how I conduct myself. But our country is based on the idea that our rights are endowed by God, beginning with the right to life, as well as the right to liberty and the pursuit of happiness. That's in the Declaration of Independence. That's how our founders conceived of this country. It's based on the idea that there's a higher power, and people throughout our history have recognized that. So I think it's partly personal faith in God, but I think it's also just in America, as an elected official, when you swear that oath to support and defend the Constitution, that Constitution was framed against that backdrop in the Declaration of Independence to say this country is founded on the idea your rights do not come from government, they come from our Creator, the Lord our God.
And I have to say something about this guy, because we did have 4, 3, and a 1-year-old at the time, and it was, obviously you can imagine, it was hard just psychologically going through that, but going through 6 rounds of chemotherapy, 6 weeks of radiation, and 3 surgeries, this guy never left my side. And that speaks volumes about who he is as a person, right? Because he's running the state of Florida. He could be doing a million of things, but when I was getting chemotherapy, and it was not fun, he's sitting there for literally 6 and 7 hours at a time, there holding my hand when he could, when it wasn't covered in ice. And he was there just to support me. And you know, all of the arrows that you see that he gets to know the truth about who he is, that's a big deal. And, you know, he talked about the prayers. That is so true. I got boxes and boxes and boxes of letters, and I began to think about other people who were going through a cancer diagnosis. And I said, all of these wonderful prayers of hope, and I would get stories from people talking about the importance of faith and staying strong. And I'm a stage 4 survivor of 20 years, and all of these things. I said, well, why am I just getting this? There are so many people out there who are suffering who need to see that too. And so we started doing something in the Florida where we were putting this all forward facing and allowing other people to pray for folks and to ensure that they know that they're being thought about and that they're being loved and they're being prayed for. And I think that that's a really big deal. But here's the other thing about that diagnosis. You know, the Lord works in mysterious ways, and I truly believe that, because prior to getting that cancer diagnosis, I don't think I would be able to come out and talk to a wonderful room of 500 people, right? I would never wish anything like that on my worst enemy. But I'll tell you what, after going through that, it has given me such faith, such context and perspective on life. It has given me the strength to do things that I never thought were possible, to be able to stand next to him and fight for our God-given rights and fight for our republic and fight for our way of life, which I think, by the way, is hanging in the balance. And so I see the challenges that the good Lord put me through that I did not understand at the time. I can't even begin to tell you how much I struggled, but it was faith that pulled me out when I had no other direction other than my family and the good Lord there to be able to support me. And I'm able to be here now to go across the United States of America to advocate for what I know in my heart to be true, because he put me through that and that test, and I came out stronger on the other side. And I think that should give a lot of people hope.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You know, I just cannot thank you both enough. I know there were a million different places that you could be, but we are just so blessed that you chose to spend some time with us talking from your heart about what is so important, and that's life. And I just want you to know that I have been praying for you and your family, and I will continue to do so. Thank you so much for being here.
God bless. Thanks so much.
God bless you.